So I remember that line from Forrest Gump where he says, you have to put the past behind you before you can move on. And basically he says that because, you know, he had to go for that huge run. So when Jenny kind of like abandons him and just leaves him, he just sits on the porch and he doesn't know what to think of it because he doesn't have the mental capacity to understand what's happened to him. And so he's just like, okay. And so he just decides to run. And as he said in the film, he goes, that's what I think of in terms of, you know, you've got to put the past behind you before you can move on. In terms of, you need a bit of an emotional journey to sometimes let things go, because when you needed the thing, you were in a particular mind space, and when you were able to drop the thing, you were in a different mental space. So sometimes there is a process for letting go of things, because some things in our lives, we get addicted to them. You know, whether or not they're relationships or a job or a way of behaving, circumstances, whatever it is, you get attached to them, and we feel like that is who we are and we really need them. But I just want to talk a little bit about this idea of putting the past behind you, because I know with me that's been a big thing in my life, where sometimes it's taken me years to get over things. And whether or not it's a relationship, or if it's something that someone said to you that annoyed you, upset you, circumstances that didn't turn out the way you wanted them to, and you feel like you can't let it go. And then it's not until you kind of reach a point in your life where you just go, you know what, I don't need that anymore, that you can actually move on. And then what happens is automatically you start to get things, all of a sudden things start happening in your life. And you go, I guess that's true. You have to be ready to let it go before you can move on. And it's like your psyche knows this, you know, because you can try and trick yourself and say, well, hang on, I can still be me, and I can get anything I want in my life. But we only really have the mental capacity. If you can imagine it like when we're talking about vibration, we only really have the mental capacity to kind of vibrate in a certain way for certain things to come into our life to a limited capacity. You can't have everything at once. If you had everything at once, it would just be too much. You know, there'd be bombs going off, you'd be getting married, you'd be graduating from college, you'd be making millions of dollars, you'd be in poverty all at once, and it doesn't work. Like, we have a linear life, so we have to accept that there's only a certain amount of things that can come to us at once. And life has a way of reflecting back to us exactly what's going on inside of us in the outside world. So it's almost like thinking about it like trading cards. So if you can imagine, if you've got a set of cards, you know, if you've got 100,000 cards, I mean, you can't look at that many cards at once. But if you've got a deck of cards, then that's something that's manageable, and you can say, okay, you can hold them in your hand, and these are your cards. Okay, it becomes meaningless if you have too many. And also, if you don't have enough, you're probably like, well, it feels a bit empty, I'd like to have a few more cards. So let's say a spread of cards is very helpful. So our life is a little bit like that. You know, we're holding cards in our life, but we can't just suddenly say we want everything at once, because we don't have the capacity to accept it all at once. So what do you do with cards? You trade them for something better. And this is kind of what we do with life all the time. You know, we have a set of circumstances and we go, okay, this is me. I'm married to this particular person, or not married. I've got these particular friends, or maybe you don't. I've got this particular job, or maybe you don't. Whatever your circumstances are, you attach yourself to it, and that becomes our identity. And so we have our cards, and if we decide that we're not happy with those cards, we can decide to trade them in for something else. You can change your job, you can change your relationships, you can change your living circumstances. But this is where it gets really interesting, because I think this is the thing. When you're trading in your cards, if you're not feeling happy in your life, if you're not feeling grateful for things, or you're not feeling just energized and excited, then what you're trading is going to trade into something worse. And no matter what it looks like, you might be like, oh, this will be good for me. It'll end up being worse, because you know, the way you're feeling is not good. So whenever you're feeling bad, you're naturally going to attract bad things into your life, and vice versa. If you're feeling good, you're naturally going to attract good things into your life. It doesn't matter how they look on the outside, but you know, if you're feeling good, you're going to generate more of those good feelings. So when we recognize this, we can start to realize that what is going on outside of ourselves is a reflection of the inside. And it's so hard to know, and I know that from my own experiences as well, that the outside world is really convincing, and it's always hard to think like, I didn't want this. Why is this coming to me? But the truth is, what we're getting back into our lives is a set of cards that is based on our expectations of what we can imagine, or not what we can imagine, but what we expect for ourselves. So you'll never get anything in your life that is more than your kind of expectation, because somehow you'll find a way to, like, if you have a wonderful circumstance, somehow you'll find a way to go, oh, I didn't really deserve it. Like people who win the lottery and then they lose it all because it wasn't your true vibration. You might have had a moment to go, oh, I won the lottery, and then you forget about it and go, oh, I don't deserve it, and then your life circumstances can change really, really quick. So this idea about the cards is, when we do let go of something that was holding us back, or something that was very emotional, like maybe you got over some abuse that you went through, or maybe you had a relationship that ended, whatever it is, those things, whatever they are, they're all from the past. And because we're constantly changing, anything that we experience in our current reality is actually from the past, because that was who we were before. And because we're always changing, anything that we experience is always a delayed reaction. Like the light we see from the sun is old news because it's already finished. So think about the cards that you've got. And think about, you know, we can only have a certain amount of cards, and that psychological effect of letting go of something, even if it's painful. And I'll just use the example of a relationship. You know, it can be so painful to have someone in your life and then the relationship ends. Maybe it ends from it's out of your hands, they decide to leave you, or maybe you decide to leave them. In both cases, I think it can be really painful, because even if you made the decision to leave the relationship, it's like there's still part of you that is just like gone, and you sit there and think, what is this void? Why do I feel so empty? You know, you can think about that movie with Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet. I think it's called Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind or something. But it's about this guy and girl trying to figure out how to get over a relationship. And what they had to do is basically go to this company, this futuristic company, to delete each other from their memories, because it was too painful for them to realize that they loved each other and they couldn't let each other go. You know, it was too painful to be apart. And, you know, I've certainly experienced that with relationships, you know, ending, in terms of it's very hard to feel good after it finishes, because all you can think about is the memories and the rose-tinted glasses of, oh, but maybe I could have made it work. What did I do wrong? You know, and you can go from feeling like, you know, you're very loved, and then all of a sudden you can go to a feeling of abandonment. Oh, that person doesn't care about me anymore. Somehow I've done something wrong and they're gone from my life now. And the mind sometimes doesn't even understand it, even if you made the decision. You can feel that pain of just losing something. You know, obviously you didn't lose it, but it's gone. And you go, well, why don't I have that? Why don't I have anybody caring for me anymore? Why don't I have someone to love me? Why don't I have, you know, nice, warm, cozy feelings anymore? And so, you know, our psyche just goes, that feels terrible. I don't like it. What's happened? I need to go back. I need to go back and fix my life and get back what I know from the past made me kind of happy. And again, it's trying to fill up those trading cards. It's trying to fill up your spread of cards in your hand, which is your life. Always trying to fill it up, make sure it's the right reflection of who you are and who you want to be at every moment. You know, life, career, relationships, enjoyment, creativity, all that sort of thing. All those areas of our lives that we constantly want to make them as best as they can be to represent who we are in the now moment. And unfortunately that means it does change quite a bit. Anyway, so back to this idea that you have to let go of the past in order to move on. So the interesting thing is, if you can imagine your deck of cards, right? And you say, okay, that thing has gone out of my life, whether it be a relationship or job, whatever, you let it go and suddenly you've got an empty hand and you go, my deck is not full and I don't feel satisfied. My life has changed and I've let things go. It can be painful in the beginning because you're just looking at the emptiness. But what's interesting is that you've actually let go of something from your previous version of you. So it's actually, you're letting go a part of yourself from the past. Okay, and so what that means is that you're then able to come into alignment with your current person, who you are, because until you let go of that card, you haven't got space to let anything else in. So that's what's really interesting. That's why it's so important, because if you let that go, even if it's painful, even if it really, really hurts, it's the old you. So you have to let it go. And then as soon as you let it go, it's like gushing water into a vacant space. It will just get filled up, and then things will come up out of the blue that you didn't even know were there. Because all the time they've been sitting there hovering, basically you can't see it, but it's sitting there at your door going, is there any space here? Is there any space here? This is something that Chris has called, has been calling for many, many years, and there's no way in. Can I get in? No, there's no space. Oh, when is he going to be ready? When is he going to be ready for this new circumstance? And the reality is it doesn't come in until you're ready to let go of the past. So this is what I've learned about things. Sometimes you have to be very courageous to stay in tune with who you really are and accept that sometimes other people aren't going to understand what it is that you're going through and what you need in your life. And when you can let things go, that's when your life will truly change. And so what's really important to recognize about this is that you can't punish yourself, because everybody feels bad with an empty hand. A lot of people don't have the courage to do it. So one of the things I want to say with this is try not to punish yourself, because nobody feels happy when their card deck, their spread, is empty. And it will happen to everybody at a certain point in time. Again, that's just the process of letting go. And many people haven't got the courage to do that. You can see it with people. They cling on in marriages that they're just not happy in, or they stay in jobs. They stay in the same job their whole life, and they do all these things to maintain the status quo. And you think they must be really happy, but a lot of the time those people are not happy. They're just doing the best that they can with their fear set, and they're holding grimly onto their cards because they don't want to take the chance of going with what they truly desire in their heart, which is your actual frequency. And as I said, unless you can have the courage to let go of a few of those cards, or perhaps your whole spread, and just go, I'm out, and just let all the cards go down, then you can't pick up new cards. Cards are such a good analogy. And just remember, when you do put down that hand and you're willing to take the time, because it will be uncomfortable to go through that and have to experience being isolated or being out of things. And this is where I suppose my experience has been helpful, because I've gone through all that. I've gone through all the having to start again a million times. So many times I've had to start from scratch. And also this, going through not fitting into a particular group. I've gone into different industries. I've had to start from basically the beginning so many times in my life. Changed industries, changed everything about my life. Changed location many times. And, it's a very uncomfortable position to be in sometimes. But as I said, at the end of the day, and I think this is what I find for myself, it is really important to be who you truly are. And like I said, the things that you want, the things that you're really attuned to, life is constantly trying to bring it to you. Constantly trying to say, you know, are you ready? Can I give it to you now? Is it all right if I give it to you now? Is it fine? This is what you've always dreamed of, and it's sitting at your doorstep waiting for you to be ready for it. So if you've got the courage to put down your hand, put down your deck, and pick up some new cards. Okay, sometimes you can pick up a dud card and go, oh, what was this? But honestly, your life is always sitting there trying to give you what you feel you are expecting of. So that's what I mean by, if you have the courage, but also tied with the courage is you need to be feeling positive, and it has to work within your beliefs. Because if you have all these negative beliefs and say, oh, I can't do this, can't do that, sometimes it is easier to hold on to what we've had in the past, because we know that the fear possibly sometimes can be overwhelming. And I would say about myself that I've had to go through a lot of those fears of, you know, so many different things. But at the end of the day, when you can have the courage to let go of those fears, you know, the chances of picking up a better card and ending up with a much better spread for your life that fits who you really are is worth it.